Welcome to Be the Change, the impact of Black teachers and how you can join the profession. In today's conversation, we will be discussing the impact of Black teachers in the classroom. My name is Niambi Clay, and I will be your moderator for today. I work for an organization called Teach.org, which is a nonprofit that partners with school districts and teacher preparation programs around the country to support anyone who is considering teaching. At Teach.org, we believe that a diverse teaching workforce is a direct means to achieving a more equitable society. And having more Black teachers is a significant component of promoting anti-racism in our education system. Although we know the current legacy of racism and inequity in our nation is not new, this conversation could not be more timely given the current socio-political environment. I'm very grateful that you have joined us for this opportunity to hear directly from wonderful Black educators and leaders. I've been in education for over 25 years. I began my career as a teacher, a math teacher, in the San Francisco Bay Area for 8 years. For the past decade or so, I've been working with districts around the country on educational access issues. I have seen the impact of the shortage of Black teachers, both as a teacher and an administrator. And so that's why I'm very excited today to have this conversation with these phenomenal educators. So today we'll be hearing from 3 speakers, Dr. John B. King Jr., Dr. Precious Simonette, and Mr. Sharif El-Mekki. We will have time for some Q&A, so you will have time to ask questions of our panelists. And at the end, we will be sharing some free resources for those of you who are interested in becoming teachers. Please make sure you stay towards the end because we do have some special scholarship opportunities available. After the session closes, you will also receive a post-session survey. So we would really appreciate it if you took a few moments to complete that and share your insights with us. We hope today that you will leave inspired to consider the teaching profession and equipped with resources in helping you get there. So a few housekeeping items first, just so you know how to participate in today's event. On the left side, you should see this housekeeping slide, that's your viewer. But on the right side, you do have a control panel. And so under your audio settings, you should see a questions pane. This is where you will submit your text questions to us, your suggestions, your ideas, anything you want to share with us, you can submit in your questions pane today. If your control panel goes away, there's a little orange arrow at the top. So you would just hit that and it should come back and then you can continue to submit your questions. I wanted to say after the webinar is over in a few days, we will be sharing a recording with you as well. So look out for that. Okay, as we get started, we first want to know who is in the room with us. So we want to know, where are you on your journey to becoming a teacher? I'll give you a few seconds to answer the poll just so we can know who's here with us today. Okay, let's see who's in the room. Oh, wonderful. It looks like we have about a quarter of you that are considering teaching, which is awesome. We hope that you receive information today that will be helpful. It looks like there are several of you, about half of you are already a teacher or are pursuing your teaching credential. Please, for those of you who are already in the teaching pipeline, also share this information with potential teachers. Share these resources, share the information to encourage them to become teachers as well. So great, looks wonderful. Let's get started. So our first speaker, Dr. John B. King Jr., began his career as a high school social studies teacher and a middle school teacher. He eventually became the New York State Education Commissioner and then the U.S. Secretary of Education under the Obama administration. He is now the president and CEO of the Education Trust, a national nonprofit organization that seeks to identify and close educational opportunity and achievement gaps. Welcome, Dr. King. We are honored to have you join us today. Can you please share your webcam with us? I think you're muted. Hold on one moment. Let me get you unmuted. There you go.
Grateful to be here and pleased to be a part of this important conversation at this moment. You know, part of how I'd frame our conversation today is that we're talking about education and the teaching career in an incredibly challenging context for the country and for the country's schools. We have the backdrop of COVID-19, which has put into sharper relief and exacerbated many inequities that existed before COVID-19. We're seeing that students of color are more likely to be in homes where there are not devices, where there's not internet. They're more likely to be in districts where there are not enough resources to support teachers around professional development. We know that only about 1 in 5 African Americans in the workforce can work from home. Only about 1 in 6 Latinos in the workforce can work from home. And so many students are working on their own on their schoolwork, or maybe with an older sibling. Many students are in difficult circumstances at home. Their families are experiencing economic trauma, health trauma. So this is a challenging moment for schools for all of those reasons. And we're going to see learning loss for students. We're going to see socio-emotional challenges for students. At the same time, we have this national moment of conversation about police violence and a national movement to try to finally address what has been a problem from the beginning of America's history. We know that the roots of police violence today are in slavery and Jim Crow and anti-Blackness that has been a part of American society for 400 plus years. So that's the backdrop for this conversation. On Sunday, I was at the DC protest with my daughters. My daughters are 13 and 16, and we were right in front of Lafayette Park, right by the White House. And we were trying to ask our government to do better, to make our society more just. And I've had this series of conversations with my daughters about what do we do in this moment? How can we make a difference? And my main message to all of you is that teaching can be the difference in strengthening our society, expanding opportunity for African American students, and building a better America. You know, the evidence is very clear that when African American students have the opportunity to have an African American teacher, academic outcomes improve. In fact, there's one study that was published by Johns Hopkins that showed not only are African American students who've had an African American teacher in elementary school more likely to graduate from high school, they're actually more likely to enroll in college. 13% more likely if they've had one African American teacher in elementary school. Over 30%, 32% more likely to enroll in college if they've had 2 Black teachers in elementary school. So there's powerful academic impact, there's powerful socio-emotional impact, having a teacher who looks like you, who understands your identity. There's also an important impact for white students. I think it's important for white students to see teachers and leaders of color in their schools and communities. So there's tremendous impact that Black teachers can have, and yet we have too few. Majority of kids in the nation's public schools are kids of color. Only 18% of our teachers are teachers of color. Only 2% of our teachers are African American men. We have a lot of work to do to diversify the teaching profession. We need you, those of you who are current teachers, we need you to stay. Those of you who are thinking about teaching, we need you to enter the profession. We need what you can contribute. Before we turn to questions, I want to underscore the powerful difference that teachers can make. When I was a kid, I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. I lost both my parents when I was a kid. My mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. And after my mom passed, it was just me and my dad. My dad was very sick with undiagnosed Alzheimer's. And home was really hard and lonely and scary and inconsistent. And as he got more sick, I had to take on more and more responsibility. But teachers literally saved my life. I think often about my teacher in 7th grade social studies, Celestine Desajor, Miss D. She's the first African-American teacher that I had. Her classroom was a place where I felt safe and inspired and engaged. When I was in her classroom, I was totally focused on the work that we were doing. It was the one time that I wasn't consumed by thoughts about home and all the challenges at home and all the challenges my father was experiencing. In her class, I remember we were doing a project on the Aztecs, an Aztec newscast project, and I was an Aztec sportscaster. And the most important thing in the world to me in that moment in her classroom was to just be the best Aztec sportscaster there had ever been. The passion she brought for social studies and the passion she brought for students, her concern for us, her desire for us to believe in ourselves was transformative for me. And I know that the folks who are on this call can be that difference for a young person. You can be that transformative presence in a young person's life. So I'm just thrilled to be here. I look forward to questions and certainly look forward to hearing from Sharif, who I've long admired, and Precious, who's accomplishing great things in her classroom.
Thank you, Dr. King. That was excellent. We have some questions, so let's pause here to answer a few of those. For the audience, there will be more time for Q&A after our other speakers, so please keep those questions coming. So Dr. King, what are the top 3 kind of inputs or levers that states and school systems can do to address these systemic inequities? Especially, you know, now that they're coming to light and they're being highlighted in this time, are there things that states and school systems can do?
Yeah, well, 3 that come immediately to mind. One is we have huge resource challenges. Students of color are much more likely to attend schools where there are less monetary resources, where the teachers that they have are less well prepared, where they have less access to advanced coursework like AP and IB. Students of color, particularly African Americans, are less likely to have access to quality early childhood education, less likely to have access to school counselors, more likely to be subject to exclusionary discipline, suspensions, and expulsions. So you have this resource disparity for students of color, particularly low-income students of color, and that then has an impact on academic outcomes. 2, we aren't doing enough in states and districts to make sure that we diversify the teaching profession. There are concrete steps we can take. We need to invest in historically Black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions. We have to make college more affordable. We have a crisis of Black student debt in this country, where Black students at every income level are more likely to borrow more and more likely to default than their white peers. So we ought to at least double Pell Grants. We ought to invest a lot more in our HBCUs, MSIs, our public higher ed institutions to create more opportunities for students to complete their degree and enter the teaching profession. We got to rethink hiring practices in districts, do a lot more to recruit teachers of color and then to retain them. The third piece is we've got to think about instruction and what's kids' learning experience in schools. I think about the work of Gloria Ladson-Billings, who talks about you really need 3 things to have culturally responsive pedagogy. You need rigorous academics. Right? Students have to learn rigorous content. You need students to be culturally competent in their own culture and experience. So you need a curriculum that gives students opportunities to see mirrors, to see themselves reflected, to learn about African American history, to read African American authors. And you need students to develop what she calls a socio-political consciousness, an awareness of the societal injustices and the work that we need to do to strengthen our society. And you can't just do 2 of the 3 or 1 of the 3, you need to do all 3 to have culturally responsive pedagogy and to get the kinds of long-term outcomes we want. So that's a start. There's a lot more we need to do to advance equity, but that, if we could do those 3 things, that'd be a big start.
Excellent, thank you. As a follow-up, you talked about increasing the number of Black teachers, things that we can do. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about what's been working so far in terms of increasing the number of Black teachers. What strategies do you think have worked up to date to get more Black teachers in the classroom?
Yeah, well, part of what we need is targeted programs that are designed to increase the pipeline of teachers of color. I think about programs like Call Me Mister that are designed to recruit folks of color, particularly African American teachers, and to help often provide the mentoring and support they need to make it through the undergraduate experience or graduate experience. Part of that needs to be financial. We know that in places where there's additional financial support for prospective teachers, that can make a huge difference in people's ability to choose teaching. Two, we need to create communities, mentors and support. I hope Sharif will talk about his work with the fellowship in Philadelphia. There are similar efforts all over the country. There's the Bond Project here in Montgomery County, Maryland, where I live. These opportunities to have veteran teachers of color, veteran African American teachers, particularly important to have men involved in that, male teachers of color, in a position where they are mentoring young teachers, mentoring prospective teachers, taking student teachers, helping folks move into the profession. And then I have to give credit to HBCUs. If you look nationally, HBCUs account for a very disproportionate share of our Black teachers, Black doctors, Black lawyers, and that's a tradition that dates back into the 1800s and the post-Civil War period when many HBCUs were founded. So that HBCU tradition is really important, and one of the things we've got to do as a country is invest in historically Black colleges and universities so they have the resources to continue to train teachers. Because of the racial wealth gap, HBCUs often don't have the kind of endowment that predominantly white institutions do. So investment by federal and state governments is particularly important.
Excellent. I totally agree with you. I went to Spelman College, so I am all about supporting our HBCUs. We'll take one more question in this Q&A, and then we'll still, like I said before, have time to come back to Q&A after our other two speakers. So this final question for now, education policy is supposed to be guided by the premise of what's in the best interest of the student. Can you talk a little about how the lack of Black teachers in school districts is not in the best interest of students? And by that, I mean all students, not just Black students, but white students, Asian students, all students could benefit from Black teachers. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little to that.
That's right. I mean, I'll start with the impact on students of color. We know that students of color benefit from seeing teachers and leaders of color in their schools. I talked about some of the academic benefits. There are also social benefits. We know, for example, that teachers of color, particularly African-American teachers of African-American students, are less likely to rely on exclusionary discipline, less likely to suspend or expel students, more likely to provide the kind of array of socio-emotional supports they need. So there's an important role there. But as you say, all students benefit from having diverse teachers. When you think about where we are as a country around issues of race, I think it points to a failure of our country to do socio-emotional learning well for many white students because if you get through your education and you are unaware of the history of race in America, if you harbor false racist beliefs, that's a failure of our education system. And so we need an education system that provides a curriculum that helps all students develop a deep sense of our history, the challenges in our history to racial equity, the work we need to do to be a stronger society. That should be true for all kids, not just kids of color, white kids too. All kids need that. And having diverse teachers makes it more likely that the decisions about school curriculum, about how schools are organized, will reflect our diversity as a country. So I think we can't get out of the situation we are in as a country if we don't address the diversity of our educated workforce.
Thank you. So true. Could not agree more. Like I said before, we'll have more time for Q&A, so please keep those questions coming. Before we hear from our next speaker, we have a quick question for our audience. and that is, did you have a favorite teacher that changed your life or inspired you or motivated you in some way? You just heard Dr. King talk about one of his teachers that really inspired him. Asking the question of you now. Just give you a few moments to answer the question. Okay, let's see what you all said. Okay, as expected, most of us, the vast majority of us, have teachers that have inspired us or changed our life in some way. Our next speaker is just that type of teacher. She has inspired her students and changed their lives. Dr. Precious Simonette has been teaching for the past 14 years with the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Currently, she teaches at Miami Norland Senior High School in Miami Gardens, Florida. She is also an adjunct professor in the Educational Leadership Department at St. Thomas University. Dr. Simonette was named the 2016 NEA Superhero Educator and was named 2017 Miami-Dade County Public Schools Teacher of the Year. She is also the CEO of the Florida Freedom Writers Foundation, an organization that's dedicated to elevating student voices, promoting student empowerment, and youth civic activism. As Dr. Simonette speaks with you, we will be sharing some photos of her with her students. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Simonette. We are thrilled that you are here to share your story.
Hi.
Hello. I see that you have turned on your camera, but it's not showing quite yet. So let me try it again.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to keep trying to turn on your camera as you get started, and we'll see if it works.
Okay.
But we at least have pictures of you with your students so people can see who you are.
Okay. Okay. So first and foremost, I like to take the opportunity to thank Teach for inviting me to be a part of this webinar and to discuss such an important issue. I am humbled, I'm honored, and I'm excited to learn from everyone and to share this space with everyone. I teach because I believe in servant leadership, teaching students how to write and communicate effectively so that they can speak up and speak out. I am definitely a proud Black educator. I'm inspired every single day and motivated by my students because I get to bear witness with them learning and falling in love with writing and learning how to advocate for themselves, for the people who they love, and for the things that matter to them. About 4 years into my teaching career, I thought I had arrived. I thought that I was perfect, that I was flawless, that I knew everything, and that I didn't have to learn anything from everyone else because I knew everything. One day, I think I had just grown extremely tired, weary of the monotony of my classroom. It was the same thing day in and day out. I felt as if I was like suffocating. So I wanted to go against the grain a little bit. I told my students, I said, okay, guys, today we're going to do something different. We're going to do a journal entry, and it's going to be a free write. My students had about 10 minutes. I said, write whatever you want. If you do a oopsie, you end up, writing like a curse word, it's completely fine. I'm not going to tell you. It's okay. Don't pay attention to grammar. Don't pay attention to sentence structure. I just want you to get out whatever it is you need to get out. I wanted my students and I to be free of that monotony that we were experiencing. That day, my heart broke into a million different pieces because I learned that my students were dealing with a lot of things that I was unaware of. Many students told me that they were dealing with depression, fear, gang and gun violence. One student even admitted to being molested and being a cutter. So every single day she would go home and she would try to cut deeper and deeper so that it can result in her death. I was at a loss. My heart was broken. I literally didn't know what to do or where to go from there. Um, I think it was at that point where I realized that I failed my students, that I had failed myself. I had failed as a Black teacher, teaching Black students in a Black school and a Black neighborhood. And that was something that was very, very difficult for me to swallow. It took me a long time to pull myself from that darkness. I had to do a lot of praying, a lot of meditating, researching, talking, and I had to do a lot of forgiveness. But I was so blessed that I had students that was willing to tell me the truth and to kind of sort of walk with me on this journey, not only to improve their lives, but for me to improve mine. That day, I remembered the power of writing. I remembered the importance of speaking up for oneself and for advocating. And I vowed never, ever to be that type of teacher again, because that was never the type of teacher that I aspired to be. That was also a time when I realized that there was a God, because I know that I wouldn't have been able to pull myself out of that darkness by myself. So I was extremely blessed to be in that space where I was able to kind of sort of reimagine myself as an educator, reimagine my classroom, and reimagine the world in which a student wanted to come to a class to be themselves, to learn about themselves, and just to like make moves in the world. Black teachers are needed in classrooms because we have to be there to breathe life into our kids. We have to be there to let them know that they are loved. We have to be there to remind them that they are beautiful, that they are important, that they are worthy, and that they are not inferior to any race. Black teachers are needed because representation, respect, resiliency, the opportunity to right the wrongs, and that the fact that teaching is a revolutionary act is extremely, extremely important. When Black students see Black teachers in their classrooms or running a school, they think to themselves, oh my God, that's someone who looks like me. I can relate to them. My existence is acknowledged. I automatically have an advocate if something were to happen. Black teachers are needed because it is a matter of respect. If I see people standing in front of me or running a building, that gives me the permission, like, wow, like I can do that too. That opportunity is available to me. Here is a Black person who looks like me, who's respected for their intelligence and their leadership capabilities. Wow, like I could do that. Respect and representation definitely matters. Black teachers are needed to remind our students that resilience, it lives in them. They come from a legacy of resilience. Many of our Black students are dealing with emotional, physical, psychological, and spiritual abuse that's passed down from generation to generation, not to mention what they witness and experience every single day because they are a Black living in America. We need to be there to remind them what resilience looked like, to give them that guide, to give them that practice that they needed, to let them know that this too shall pass. And although we've had a difficult past and we're experiencing a difficult present, we're still here. We could still learn, we could still grow, and we could still mobilize. Black educators are needed because students need to have the opportunity to right the wrongs of history. There is something magical that happens when a Black student is able to tell their story unapologetically and to speak up and to speak out and to advocate. It is a beautiful thing to witness. And as a Black educator, I need to be there. We all need to be there, helping our students to elevate their voices and to build agency into them at that moment, right then and there. They don't have to wait until they graduate high school or go to college or become an adult. They could start a revolution like right there, simply by being themselves and telling their stories and speaking up. This is also the time when they realize that vulnerability is a strength. They understand that when you work as a collective, you're creating this sense of community. They are able to organize and strategize and mobilize and make things happen. And I can tell you as an educator, watching my students do these things every single day is one of the most, it's a proudful thing. It's like I'm like a teacher mama in the corner looking like, yes, yes, you better get it. And I love to see when my students take charge like that. But we need to have Black educators there doing that, because many of the times when students try to do this, they're often shut down because they are thought to be aggressive and to be dangerous. Black educators are needed because teaching in itself is a revolutionary act. When we have the opportunity to teach our students our Black history every single day, not just during the month of February or during a certain time, you are indirectly sending a message to our kids. I am good enough to learn my true history and to develop a knowledge of self is very, very extraordinary for students. When you are going through this and you're learning these different things that happen in history where people were negligent, and not taking the opportunity to tell it, a metamorphosis happens, a transformation happens. This is why HBCUs are so important, right? When you teach students the truth, you help to bring about change, and you help students to build a sense of confidence, a sense of self-esteem, and it is okay for them to be a proud Black individual. I want to take the opportunity to thank every educator, leader, or mentor who has helped me along my journey and my teaching career. I want to give a special shout out to those Black educators, mentors, and leaders, because you not only paved the way, but you helped me to pave my own way. Black educators are needed because inequality and inequity are issues in America and around the world, and it has to stop. To my brothers and sisters who are considering joining the teaching profession, listen, we want you, we need you, we love you, we are here to help you. Come join this noble profession. Come answer the call to be a freedom fighter. Come stand on the just side of history. Come be a part of the solution and not the problem. Become an educator, invest in children, and help the world to become a better place. In the spirit of my remarks today, I would like everyone to take the opportunity to go and listen and watch the video, India Irie's What If? And after you watch that video, I want you to think to yourself, what if I wasn't a teacher? Or what if I became a teacher? How much more could I do, and how better the world could be? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Simonette. We could not see you, but we could feel you. So thank you so much for your remarks. They were powerful. Oh, there you are. Now you're up on it. Thank you.
I don't know what happened. Maybe all the cheer is good. I was happy to see the ugly crying faces, but it's great.
It is okay. Like I said, we felt you. We couldn't see you, but we could feel you. So thank you. As we move to our next speaker, I just want to remind you all to don't forget to put your questions in your question pane. We will be answering them after our next speaker, Mr. Sharif El-Mekki. So Sharif El-Mekki began his career as a social studies teacher and was a nationally recognized principal at Mastery Charter School, Shoemaker campus in Philadelphia. His school was awarded the prestigious EPIC Award for 3 consecutive years for accelerating student achievement. Currently, Sharif is founder and CEO of the Center for Black Educator Development. The center exists to ensure equitable recruiting, training, hiring, and retention of quality educators that reflect the cultural backgrounds and share common socio-political interests of the students that they serve. The center is developing a nationally relevant model to measurably increase teacher diversity and support Black educators. As Sharif speaks with you, we will also be sharing some photos of him over the span of his career. Thank you, Sharif, for being here with us today. We are so excited to hear your insights.
Thank you so much, Nyambi. I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for teach.org for having us. I have a poll up, and I would love for participants to answer that, and we will share the results once you've completed. But how many Black male teachers have you had during your educational career, your K-12 career? Give people a couple more seconds to respond, and then we will share the results. Dr. King mentioned the fellowship, Black Male Educators for Social Justice, and I'll definitely talk about that because the answer to your poll, so 37% 0, and 54% 1 to 3. So very few. Only 8% had 4 or more across 12 or 13 years of their education. And that's definitely a theme that I would like to speak about today. So again, teach.org, I'm grateful that you all were able to pull this together, particularly during this time. I think about when I began my teaching career, it was a quarter century ago, and it was fresh off of the Rodney King assault and an innocent verdict. And we see today of all the things that we are dealing with, and the continuation of state-sanctioned murder in our cities, and all the other ways that anti-Blackness and racism permeate society and our institutions. And so I firmly believe, just like a quarter century ago, it was one of the reasons that the organizations that helped me become a teacher, there were nonprofits, there were HBCUs, Cheney University, and the School District of Philadelphia, that recruited Black men to get into education, to become teachers. The issues that were happening in the streets and in communities, looked at education as a part of it, and teachers as civic leaders that they are, being a part of the solution. And while teaching wasn't part of my original plan, once I started, I never looked back. Originally, I wanted to be a lawyer. I looked at the courtroom as the place for me to really stand for justice and fight on behalf of my community. I knew I wanted to dive into activism, but I didn't necessarily look at education and teaching as activism. Now I know better. It is the best way to demonstrate activism in a sustained way, in a pervasive way. And I'm grateful to be there. What I knew 26 years ago was that I knew I wanted to be to have an impact on my community. And so when I met a Black male educator, Dr. Martin Ryder, and he asked me, why didn't I consider teaching to be a part of that? I really didn't have an answer. I knew a lot of activists who were teachers, but no one had connected the dots. I was a beneficiary of many great teachers, particularly in my elementary and middle schools, but no one really engaged me directly about becoming a classroom teacher. And so Dr. Martin Ryder helped me to connect the dots between racial justice, social justice, and educational justice. And as he was helping me to connect these dots, I realized that he was just watering and tending to the roots that my parents and my mother was a teacher, and my own teachers, what they had already established. And so Dr. Martin Ryder was really helping me to connect it in a very profound and deep way. As Dr. Simonet said, and Dr. King as well, teaching is a revolutionary act. Teaching is something that shapes nations and communities. And it's one of the best ways to uplift the trajectory of our students. And we need people who are going into the classrooms to lead, not just looking at teaching as teaching content, but leading children, leading communities. And that's an imperative. And it's something that I understood after I started teaching. And what I recognize is great teachers don't just teach and impact the students in front of them. They impact those students' grandchildren and generations to come. The fellowship that Dr. King mentioned, the Fellowship Black Male Educators for Social Justice, you'll see a picture of some of the brothers who formed that on your screen now. These were men who were interested in collectively joining a movement, ensuring that their leadership was connected and linked with other Black men's leadership, and that we were able to stand up and not just be highly effective teachers, but also ensuring that we were standing for justice, ensuring that the pressures and the racism and the biases that impact our students in our classrooms and our schools were addressed. One of the things that we used to do, and there was 17 Black men who started this, this fellowship, was this idea of going to students and to speaking to them. And what we call it was a Why I Teach tour. Our brother Raymond Roy Pace came up with that term. And we would go around and speak to students about becoming teachers. And many of them would initially say, I'm not interested in teaching because of the experiences that I have as a student, as a Black student in these schools. And so one, it speaks to the connectivity and like how we have to make sure that, yes, teaching, but also standing tall and strong and firmly against injustice and those things that make schooling and education a negative experience for so many Black children and children of color. But when we talk to them about connecting the dots, the same way that Dr. Martin Ryder did for me, between racial justice, social justice, and educational justice, when we shared with them ways that they could consider becoming a teacher that they wish they had and knew they needed, that seemed to resonate with them. Because it centered teaching as empowerment and community building. It celebrates agency and impact. And that's what I believe that our participants, whether you are on the road to teaching, considering teaching, or you're in the classroom or adjacent to a classroom already, I think that is an integral part of the work. You heard some data from Dr. King, and that was published by John Hopkins and a collective of researchers who came up. And this is the same data that it corroborated what Black communities had been saying since the late 1800s, that Black teachers matter, that they matter for Black kids, they matter for all kids, that the understanding, having this windows and mirrors as a teacher, as a Black teacher, a Black student. A Black student typically has a window to everyone else's lives. They see other people's literature, other people's heroes and quotes plastered on the walls. There's someone who does not look like them who leads the classroom, leads the school, leads the school board. And white children, conversely, always have mirrors. They see themselves positively portrayed in the literature, in the curriculum, in those who are leading in the classroom. And so what we need are windows and mirrors to be exchanged, that Black children get to have more mirrors, get to see images of themselves leading classrooms, leading schools, leading school boards. And white children need to have more diversity in their curriculum and what they intake and what they breathe in. We know that anti-Blackness has a long history. And we can't be naive to think that it does not show up in our curricula, it does not show up in our schools. And we need people, we need vanguards, we need activists who will be in our classrooms, in our schools, supporting all our students, ensuring that educational justice is realized. You know, last year was my 26th year and the last year that I worked in a school, and really wanted to pay it forward in a big way. And which is why I launched the Center for Black Educator Development, to really look at and advocate for policies that support more Black teachers, to uplift Black pedagogy, the way that Black teachers have taught for centuries and have been really effective. And I'm so glad Dr. King brought up Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billing, who really, coined that term, culture relevant teaching. And so many people, including myself and our organization, who are building on her legacy and trying to expand the work that she launched many years ago. And so our work continues to be professional learning and mentoring and coaching, as well as providing apprenticeships for high school and college students who are interested in teaching. And so we are, I'm grateful to be a part of this forum, to be able to learn and contribute right alongside of you all. But I'm hopeful that you all will continue to build community, even during, if it's virtually, to please continue to build community. Often teachers are in a room and then that becomes a silo. It does not have to be, it should not be. Know that you have a community in all of us who are on this call and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. That was great. Still encouraging our audience, if you have questions for Sharif, for Precious, for Dr. King, please, excuse me, Sharif, Dr. Simonette, or Dr. King, please put those in your question pane. Before we get to our final Q&A, we want to have pose a question to you all, and that is, how do we inspire more young Black people to become teachers? We're all working very hard to inspire more people, and especially more young Black people in particular, to pursue teaching. And so we want to know, what are your ideas of how we do this? If you could take 20 seconds, 30 seconds to put in your question pane any ideas you have that you've come up with or been inspired by as you've listened to our speakers, please put those in your question pane. We will compile those after our webinar. In addition, I know this is not enough time to really put all your thoughts in the question pane right now, so we will be sharing our email address. So if you have ideas or suggestions that come up later, I invite you to send those to us later as well. It doesn't have to be just during this webinar. So I'll give you guys about 20 seconds to do that, and then we'll move to the Q&A. Please continue to put your thoughts and ideas in the question pane as we move on to the Q&A. This first question, I would say, is for any of you, but it's probably for Dr. Simonette in particular, but that is, how are you supporting and empowering your students, particularly your Black students, during this specific time of unrest? We know this is not new in terms of our society, but during this time of unrest, what are you doing to support and empower your students? Oh, sorry, I have you muted. 1 second. Oh, Dr. Simonette, I think you have to unmute because it says self-muted.
As Dr. Simonette,
I don't think she.
Okay. Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay. So I can tell you, I've been practicing mindfulness with my students. Mindfulness has definitely been helping them out. Sometimes we do it as a group, but there have been several students who have contacted me individually, and they needed that extra, that extra time to do that. If I have come across one of my students who have been experiencing something that I am not able to help them with, I've been pushing them to my trust counselor. But I have been helping them one of the best ways I know, a way that saved my life, and that's literally through writing and talking about it. Many of my students have been a part of like virtual meetings and virtual groups where we are like bringing students together to talk about what's going on. I think my heart definitely went out to my seniors this year because they lost a lot, right? They weren't able to go to their prom and their graduation. So we are leaving this year kind of sort of with, we don't have a sense of closure. I know I don't have one as an educator, so I can only imagine how my love bugs are feeling right now. But I can tell you another thing that has like really been in my soul. Many of our students come to school because school is their refuge, and they haven't been able to do that And those are the students who I've been talking with the most. If they miss like an assignment, like I'm not calling them about the assignment, I'm calling to make sure that they are okay. But practicing mindfulness with my students, making sure I'm having those face-to-face meetings with them through Zoom, and making sure that they're continuing to write and share their stories has definitely been ways that have not only helped them, but it has helped me as well.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. King, we have a question for you, and that is, what are the 3 challenges you face? This might be for Sheree, but what are the 3 it says that you face as a school principal from the Africa diaspora?
Well, Dr. King has also been a principal, so definitely answer this.
Try to respond to that. I'll say a couple of things. One is, I think, in many ways, the role of principal is about.
Something is happening with the sound. 1 second. Something's happening with your mic. So let's try it again. Let's see.
Is that okay?
Oh no, it's still a weird sound. I'm gonna turn you off and turn you back on just to see if that'll help. Okay, let's try it.
No.
Okay, let's pose this to Sharif instead while we get your microphone issues taken care of. So Sharif, can you answer about your experience as a principal? Sorry about that.
Yeah, so, and the question was basically the experiences that I had as a Black principal. I was a principal for 16 years across 2 schools. I think one of the challenges that I faced was, growing up Black in America is not that different than growing up Black in various institutions. I'm grateful that I had a support system that recognized that, both mentors as well as, I was just telling somebody, sadly to say, that I was arrested twice as a principal. Once for being at a protest. Another time because I was a Black man driving down the street at night. I was literally leaving my school. And so the people that came to my aid, and this is the importance of having folks who understand the work and understand the connection between the issues that our students face and how they seep into schools and classrooms. The superintendent, while I disagreed with him on various things, when that happened, when that arrest happened, he was there as a white man to address the police directly about how they were charging. As a principal, I had to write an open letter to the local police department for how they treated our students at their dismissal. And so one of the things that I started doing was I noticed that Black male principal voices weren't a lot. Pennsylvania, 96% of the teachers are white. And so that doesn't just mean the classroom teacher, that also means policies, disciplinary policies, it means curriculum and things like that. And so I started a blog of Philly's 7th Ward to speak up about things and talk about things and share our perspectives. One of the more popular pieces that I wrote, and it wasn't written to be popular, it was written as an open letter to the police department for how they were treating Black middle school and high school children. And so I think we cannot, you don't shed your Blackness once you become a principal. The anti-Blackness, whether it's rhetoric or practice, does not dissipate because I've become a principal. And so I think part of it is, one, making sure that I had community, making sure that I was always trying to center and advance our students' needs. And our students were predominantly Black, and not predominantly, they were all 99% Black and Latino. And so making sure that the politics of education, that I was keenly aware of that, and that I tried to lead and serve in my community. And that was, a little easier for me as a Black man who grew up in that community.
Thank you. I see the time, and I want to make sure we get to the resources for those who are considering teaching. So I guess as a last question, I wonder if any of you have advice for those of our potential Black teachers who are on this call, who want to become teachers. Do you have any advice for them? Anything you wish you had known before you started down this journey to becoming a teacher?
I could offer up a piece of suggestion. You want to join hands with those educators who are still in love with teaching. Join hands with those educators who are still loving what they do, and have this mindset of, I'm a lifelong learner. Like, you could always learn something and to be better. Many people, like I know, like, the teaching profession isn't perfect. And I don't think there is any profession that is perfect. But I think that when I'm in front of my students and when I'm making moves with my students, there is no other utopia where I'd rather be, right? I find the positivity and the passion in that. And so when people ask me, do you still love being a teacher? Absolutely. Like, I'm proud educator. So join forces with those people who are still in love with teaching and who have this mindset of, I can always learn something to be better.
Thank you.
Now, I would just add, it's important to identify a community of support. That it's hard. Teaching can be hard. First year teaching is really hard. There are moments where you're frustrated because you can't quite figure out the right thing to connect with a student, or you can't quite figure out the right way to connect with a family. And in those situations, that community of support is just critically important. And the fact of the matter is, if you were, depending on your school context, you also sometimes are dealing with microaggressions and the challenges of operating as a person of color, as a Black person in a society that is rife with discrimination. And so to have that community of support, colleagues, other teachers of color, folks in church, folks in your family, just whatever that community of support is for you, that you can go back to, so that you can kind of fill up with the strength and love that you need to be a positive presence for your students every day. That's just critically important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sharif. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I so appreciate both of those remarks. I think having a community is vital. As I mentioned earlier, that's why we started this fellowship, Black Male Educators for Social Justice. It's why we created the Center for Black Educator Development, is to have these spaces and opportunities for folks. And you can do that, again, virtually, both in person as well as virtually. Find the folks who are, or aligned, have mentors. I often feel like as an educator, I was the most mentored man in America. So many people who were just rooting for me because they were rooting for the students that I was in front of. And, there are people in your communities that also do that. And then I would also say, continue to find the joy that you do. A lot of times people talk about work-life balance. I don't really use that term because it insinuates that there's an actual scale and balance and everything is even. If I work 8-9 hours for my students, then I need to find 8-9 hours for myself, and that's not how it often plays out. But you can every single day come up with what you're going to do from your joy list. And so I have a joy list. I love to garden. I love to be in nature. I love to play with kids. I love to with my kids. I love to have mentorship opportunities. I love to, just find a great book and read, right? And so I can't do all of those things every single day, but I can do at least one of them every day. And that's my charge. And when I can't get it that day, then I note it and I make sure that I catch up during some point of the week. So I would say, in addition to community, create your list, your joy list, and don't abandon it, no matter what.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate your thoughts and remarks. Since we are nearing the end, I want to make sure, as promised, that we review the resources that Teach has. We hope that these resources will help you all who are considering becoming teachers achieve your goals. So Teach has a plethora of resources for you all. I'll turn my camera off just so your slide is a little bigger. One thing we have is Talk to a Teacher. And so we can connect you with current teachers, and you can talk to them about what their experience is like, how they even became a teacher. And if you prefer, we can connect you with Black teachers, so you can talk specifically about their experiences. We have Financial Aid Explorers, so you can look up different ways to actually fund your teacher preparation program. We also have one-on-one coaching. So all of these things are free if you come to teach.org. So we have one-on-one coaching to help you personally find the right teacher prep program. You do want a teacher preparation program that's aligned with your values and that supports the type of teacher you want to be, whether that's subject or grade level. There are step-by-step application guides. So as you're applying to your different teacher preparation programs, these guides will help keep you on task, help you meet your deadlines. They have checklists. So it just keeps you really organized as you're applying to your teacher preparation program. In addition, there are fee reimbursements. So when you do apply, you can actually get money back on your application fees working with teach.org. So there is money back for that, and scholarship opportunities. There are a plethora of scholarship opportunities for different types of programs that you can access through teach.org. I want to point out on your slide there that Teach also has special partnerships with different areas of the country. So Colorado, Connecticut, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Houston, Kansas City, and North Carolina. All of these places have special partnerships with teach.org where they have even more additional customized resources for you. For example, right now, these areas are offering a COVID scholarship. So this is a scholarship to support prospective teachers who are facing exceptional hardships due to the COVID pandemic. If you have any questions or you need more information, I do invite you to go directly to the website. It is teach.org, so you'll find out information on all of the resources I just discussed. In addition, you can just email us directly at info@teach.org. So if you have any questions, suggestions, anything, you can email us directly at info@teach.org. And those of you, again, I will say, if you're already a teacher, please share these resources with prospective teachers that you know. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We're hoping this has been both informative and inspirational. A very special thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights and their personal experiences with us. We will be sharing this recording session in a few days, so please look out for that. I want to point out again that when you close your webinar session today, so when you push that button that says close, a very short survey will appear. It's only 5 questions, so please take a moment to answer the questions. We really, really, really want to hear your insights and your feedback for us today. And finally, I want to leave you with this fundamental question from our panelist, Sharif El-Mekki, and that is, if you want to have the largest, most sustained impact on society, why not teach? The beautiful thing about this picture is that the student you see here with Sharif actually grew up and became a teacher himself. And so that's really what we're trying to do, or really what we need to do, is to cultivate, encourage, and nurture the next generation of Black teachers. Thank you again for joining us. Please stay safe and really take good care of one another. Thank you.